Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? Today I've made a deck list for Ghoti, and I'm not talking about some kind of beard style. I am talking about the new TCG exclusive archetype, if I'm not mistaken, that now is in Master Duel. So all of you OCG people that haven't had the chance to play this deck yet, there you go, there it is. It's not amazing, it's okay, it does stuff. For the fact that it's the main archetype from a pack, I kind of hope for a bit more, but maybe there's still some support lacking eventually down the line. Possibly TCG archetypes sometimes do that a little bit. Let's not talk about FA though. This is kind of an awkward spot. It's a bit like Metaphys back in the day when it came out, because it's kind of playable and it does try to do the same kind of stuff. I think this is what Metaphys should have been like when it came out at the time, because then it would actually have been a lot more playable. Now we have this deck that trails behind the meta by so much, but it's still fun to play, and they did teach Fish how to synchro summon, so it is somewhat funny. I don't know, there's not that many Fish decks, and I think that does stuff with it, plus the fact that this is somewhat Fish support and you can splash that into Fish decks is interesting in the sense of, if there's going to be better Fish decks in the future, then this deck might become a bit more splashable. Let's go for the card by card. We run 3 of every tuner. That is simply because of the fact that we have some cards that can special summon themselves from our hand, some level 4 monsters as well, so there's that. That can be quite helpful from time to time. Then you can go into your level 6 synchro already doing your turn and do some of the plays, and so on and so on and so on. Plus, lots of them have, well, ish good effects. I feel like the only one that really matters in your starting hand is this one, because one of the other ones you send to the graveyard, and one of the other ones you kind of want to banish during your opponent's turn. So it doesn't really matter, but for the fact that if you get a level 4 monster on board, then that matters. For that point, some people played like Instant Fusion or Ready Fusion to get level 4 Fish monsters on board. Yeah, you can do this if you want to. There's that. This card is a bit better. You have the whole, you can banish this card you control, special summon 1 Fish monster from your hand. Can be very neat. If I had more consistent access to this card, I would play a different lineup of Fish monsters, because then you could actually go for some crazy interesting things like this. You sadly cannot do that all that much. And then the next effect is what they somewhat share, I want to say, because one of them doesn't. During the standby phase of the next turn after this card is banished, you can special summon this banished card, and during your opponent's main phase, if this card was special summoned this turn, you can quick effect immediately after this effect resolves synchro summon 1 Fish synchro monster using this card you control. Very interesting, very nice, the whole Axel synchro during your opponent's turn. Then we have the next one also at 3. This is the one you can banish from your graveyard, which comes in handy because you send it to the graveyard using Leaffish. So this is how you get that one to the graveyard. Or if we play White Stingray, it's not an aura monster, this one, that's only the big ones, then you can send this to the graveyard as well and get the combo off, and then you banish it. Then it also can special summon itself during the next turn's standby phase, and then you can also have that quick effect during the main phase of the opponent to synchro summon. One card that does not have this, it's this one. You can banish this card from your hand and then target 1 Fish monster in your graveyard. But annoying, you already need a Fish monster in your graveyard, because usually you won't, because you don't really have that many discards, and your deck doesn't do all that much to get stuff to the graveyard as well. There's different ways of how this would make a tiny bit more sense, but then again, it doesn't even matter if you banish it during your turn, because you have the issue during your opponent's turn. If this card is banished, you can special summon it. So if you banish it during your turn, it does absolutely nothing. And if this card is special summoned, you can immediately after this card effect resolves synchro summon 1 Fish synchro monster using this card you control. It can be very good that once it's banished, you can instantly use it to summon it back, because a lot of the time during your opponent's main phase, you will be going into this one then, and if you then with this banish this can bring itself back instantly to the board and then instantly synchro summon, so you have a disruption live. But obviously you can't do that during your turn, so this is a bit annoying. So this card is sometimes very useful and sometimes not useful at all, so you have to keep that one in mind. We have 1 Ash Blossom and 1 Infinite Impermanence, mainly because, well, we need hand traps, and these are the ones that you get in the Master Bundle packs. So I would recommend, if you're a real beginner, I would recommend investing the 750 gems per bundle to get these cards for free, because you'll need them in basically any deck, because these cards can win you games by themselves. Mainly Ash Blossom in comparison to Infinite Impermanence, but they both do some stuff. You can obviously splash in stuff like Nibiru, other hand traps. Max C is quite good. Graveyard Hate at the moment is quite good. Dimension Shifter isn't terrible for this deck. Like it works with the deck, but the deck has some things that they want in the graveyard from time to time, so it's not always good to banish everything. For a banish deck, you would think they don't use the graveyard as much as they do. A bit annoying, but it is what it is. 2 Silent Angler. I don't want to bump this up to 3. Technically you could, but it locks you from special summoning stuff from your hand, and you have quite a lot of stuff that you can special summon from your hand later onwards. So yeah, is a bit iffy from time to time, but you can bump this up to 3. We run a triple White Stingray. I like and I don't like this card. I like that it's a free fish level 4 special summon from the hand, and sometimes the discarding on water monster is really nice unless you start with a hand with only 2 water monsters, because if you have this and another one and it is not by chance this one, then your turn kind of falls apart because you can't really be doing anything else unless you have a 1 card combo starter, which is this one. So usually you'd kind of change the ratios a bit, get rid of these kind of things and play like a Beautiful Princess or stuff like Abyss Shark. You can also play Supe Duskwalker, because this card is instant access to a rank 6, which is instant access to basically all of your plays during your opponent's turn, because you can go into this one, and that is very, very important for the deck. Plus, since this is a special summon from your hand, you can actually get disrupted and still possibly have something. The discard hurts, but technically it is possible, but you then have to be playing the Supe card, and that adds another, well, I want to say brick. You can, I think, summon it from your hand, so it isn't like a brick, but obviously you could have 1 useful card in your hand instead of that one, so problematic. But they're both, these cards are all super rare, so I did not want to include them because we're already kind of super rare heavy when it comes to the extra deck. Yeah, just a tiny thing you want to consider moving on with the deck if you like the playstyle, but this should get you a good skeleton to try out the playstyle. If you don't like it, you don't have to commit to any of this nonsense that you won't be using in most other decks anyway. We have Lifeless Leaffish, mainly to send this to the graveyard, because this can banish itself from the graveyard, and then special summon during the next turn. Then you can go to this, and with this one, technically you could banish this one then, and then you can go into the level 8, and so on and so on and so on. It just gets stuff into play, and the second effect is also not too bad. You can target 3 fish monsters in your graveyard, shuffle those monsters into your deck and draw 1 card. This is how you sometimes can recycle extra deck monsters. I say sometimes because sometimes they get banished as well, and then there's not really a good way of recycling them. I decided to play 2 Ixeep because this card has multiple different functions in here. We do play multiple of the trap cards of this deck, so technically the second effect, and when it was banished, then you can target one of your Ghoti traps that is banished on your graveyard, set that target. Not too bad, because you can keep recycling this card with it, and technically if you banish a Fury with one of your with your massive banished synchro monster, then you can get that back as well. I wish the effect was you can then activate it the turn that it was set, but sadly it isn't. So yeah, makes the card a little bit worse. And if a fish monster is banished, then you can special summon this card from your hand, which can come in handy, because if you use the effect of the field spell, banish one of your monsters, or one of your fish monsters, then add this card to your hand, you can instantly special summon it. That's how it works, because then that counts as it has been banished, then you can special summon it, and that is how that combo works, I want to say. That's why I like to have 2 in the deck, just to be able to pull this off multiple turns in a row, and it's not too bad. And you have other stuff that banishes. If you have this card and this card, this can use itself, because then you'll banish this one, so that's not too bad. Technically, even with the next card, you can pull it off as well. I would run 3 of this if it wasn't so hard to get on board, because when a water monster's effect is activated, makes more sense if you play the whole like Supe stuff and then instantly go into your synchros, because then you will easily activate water monster's effect like this. There's not that many that you can activate. Yes, you can activate this card here, but the rest is already kind of difficult. Technically this, if you already have a card in graveyard, the special summoning condition of White Stingray doesn't count as activation if I'm not mistaken, so that doesn't happen. You won't be able to use this card's effect most likely unless you already banished something else, but then if you banish something else, there's a big chance that you already used a water effect, so it doesn't really matter anyway, and so on and so on and so on. Technically with this card it can come up, but a lot of the time you'd have to banish it then, because you run out of cards in your hand, and you can see it's a bit problematic. But other than that, this card effect is very nice going second. It's a quick effect to special summon it, so technically you can also do it during your opponent's turn, during one of the combos, so it still works. Doesn't really make much sense, because once you already started your combo with this one, you don't need another level 4 monster, because then you would go into a level 12 or into another level 6, and both of them don't really match. Unless you have another level 4 monster on board, then technically that can happen. The effect that you can banish one face-up fish, sea serpent, or aqua monster you control, and then target one face-up card on the field, negate its effect, can be helpful because you can banish some of your other Ghoti monsters and then just negate any other effect on the field. So that's not too bad. Could negate the effect of your field spell, for example, and then during your next turn you'll still be able to use it again. But then you have the issue that it's not protected anymore by its own effect. Decided to run 1 Eanoc. Technically I tried to run 2, but it felt a bit bricky a lot of the time, and with 3 field spells you do have access to searching it at least a tiny bit. It's good for searching the trap card, and when it's normal or special summoned you can target one of your banished level 4 or lower fish monsters, so that's fine. With Silent Angler and White Stingray you can easily normal summon as well. It's not that bad to go into, and there's also a combo that you can special summon it with Abyss Keeper and then search the trap card, so that's also possible. You could bump it up to 2, but I felt like 2, it was a bit much, but if you run lots of the combo starters, then technically this card makes maybe more sense at 2, who knows. We have triple Snopios mainly because sometimes you need to banish some stuff. Sometimes you have some stuff in the graveyard from the synchro summoning, and then you can summon this during your opponent's turn. The effect that you can target face-up card on the field, banish it when it leaves the field, isn't terrible because sometimes your opponent wants to link off certain materials because they need it in the graveyard, and then this comes in handy. There's certain applications where this helps. It can help you with your own cards if you want to banish them, and so on. And it is a level 6 monster that you can special summon as well. Technically you can go into rank 6s with your level 6 synchro pool and this one, and it can help you going into your massive creature that banishes everything if you banish 2 tuners in hand. Like if you start with this and both of them, or during your opponent's turn actually, if you start with one of them, then you can instantly go into this one at will because this card's banish effect is a quick effect. Triple of the field spell, you can try out 2. I tried out 2 for a long time, but I feel like we lacked so much consistency that you do need 3. Try it out with 2 at the start if you don't want to fully commit to it, if you only happen to get 1 or 2. Def 2 I would definitely say. 3 is maybe a bit too much to try out the deck at first. I felt like it worked a lot better like this because the field spell does quite a lot for the deck and it helps you get into certain combos, but also I understand that this is a bit expensive for a deck that you don't quite know yet if you even like it or if it's even good enough for your taste. But yeah, this one you can banish 1 fish monster from your hand or graveyard. Usually you want it to be from the graveyard because then you lose less resources, and then you can add 1 Ghoti monster from your deck to your hand, very important. And if a fish monster is normal special summon to your field while this card is in your graveyard, you can target one fish monster you control, banish it, and add this card back. So technically you have access to this even if it gets destroyed. So there is this one, absolutely fine. We have triple Forbidden Chalice. This is where the control part of the deck comes into play. Obviously good go in second, decent go in first, so not much. One of my favorite cards that I've wanted to talk about just because I like the artwork, and I feel like this card should be a tiny bit better in water control decks than it actually is. I mean, I guess hand traps are so strong that you would not really run this card because in the end it doesn't do too much, but in this specific deck it does a lot, because your game plan is to have 2 monsters, 2 water monsters on the field during your opponent's turn. That is your main game plan. And if you don't get that game plan off, then it doesn't matter if this card is useless, because then most cards are useless. But obviously Maxi could still save you, and so on and so on and so on. But for budget reasons, this card is very nice, especially because this deck tries to be a bit grindy. And not only does it stop your opponent from attacking with that monster that whose effects you're negating, also if a level 5 or higher water monster is normal special summon to your field, which you have plenty of, while this card is in your graveyard, you can set this card again. So you have recurring effect negation and attack stopping technically. So I really like this in this deck, but obviously this would be swapped out for good cards at one point. Same for Lost Wind. Also hand traps are a bit better, but for a grindy deck this card does wonders and can help you not get run over by high attack point monsters. Already talked Infinite Impermanence. 1 Ghoti Chain. You don't have to run this. If you don't have it, don't run off and craft it just yet, but it can be very important. It's searchable, it can reset itself with Ixeep, and so on and so on, and this can start your plays as well, so it's a bit of consistency. Not the best form, there's better forms in terms of super rares, but lots of people might already have pulled one if they opened the new pack, so I decided to include one of them. 2 of the continuous trap. Yes, 2. First of all, it's searchable, but even if you don't search it, if you draw into it, it's very, very nice because it's a nice disruption that you can keep looping and looping and looping. And if you, well, take out your opponent's combo pieces, it doesn't really help that much against boss monsters. It does in a way, but if you stop them in their combo, then they don't really need the monster that you get back then the next turn and so on. So it's quite nice. And you can easily reset this all the time. And the effect, the boost of attack points isn't too bad either in the later stages of the game to help you finishing a game off. You can cut it down to 1 if you have like better cards, if you have like hand traps and whatnot. 1 is still fine because it is searchable, but I don't actually mind drawing into it as well. For the extra deck, Stardust Charge Warrior, just some level 6, 8 and 10 rare and normal cards that you can use during your turn. Well, no normal cards, but in theory is what it is. Just lets you draw 1 card during your turn. You don't want to go into this during your opponent's turn because it's not a fish, but technically you can use it during your turn. White Aura Dolphin does stuff only during your turn really, but you can summon this card back and banish 1 water monster from your graveyard, so not too bad. Hyper Psychorizer, kind of the same card as Charge Warrior from the application during your turn, that stuff. This is the level 6 during your opponent's turn because it gets your play started and gets you into more stuff. Level 8 for your turn. This has decent attack stats and also you can easily make it. Plus, the first effect doesn't matter, but the last effect is once per turn during your in-phase, banish 4 cards from the top of your deck. Can be interesting. Can be interesting in a deck that wants to banish some stuff. Wouldn't still recommend it if you have better cards to play them. One better level 8 card that we want to talk about is White Aura Whale. Very, very important card, but it's a super rare and I didn't want to include it. I wanted to definitely mention it because it can burst your opponent's field. Theoretically, if the opponents in Master Duel would think ahead a tiny bit and would know this deck, then they might think you play White Aura Whale and during their turn only summon stuff in defense position if they have to, even though you don't have it in your extra deck. So in theory, it could work in your favor that if you didn't even craft this card, your opponent might still be trying to play around it, but most people won't even know what Ghotis do, and I don't think they want to be playing around this card either, but that's just like something to keep in mind. But this card is absolutely bonkers if you have it, or if you want to craft it, if you like water synchro decks in general, then this card will not be a bad investment for you at all. Other cards to mention for the extra deck, good level 8 stuff, obviously. Baron, because you can, I don't want to say easily during your turn get into level 10 synchros, but you can get into them. And the new Ice Jade monster, also doable during your opponent's turn, so one of the cards that is very, very strong. If you got it from the new pack, why not include it in here, because you can somewhat easily make level 10s. It's not that easy, but it's, well, possible. The two ones that I decided to go for is this one because it can easily banish some problematic stuff in your opponent's turn. It can get itself back, and also it can, well, I don't want to say start your stuff, but it can banish 1 fish monster you control, so it's not absolutely bad. If you banish this one itself, then you can banish 1 fish monster from your graveyard, special summon this card, and so on and so on and so on. A card that you don't have to run. If you, for example, have this one and you didn't draw any of this, then you don't need to play it. It's just a way of like going into stuff during your turn and getting some extra removal, and you can get stuff back from the graveyard and so on and so on and so on. This one isn't necessarily a very important one, but it's important that you run a certain set of decent level 8 monsters. I just had this because I opened the pack and I didn't have this, but if you have White Aura Whale, then that is probably a better option than this one in the end, although this is non-targeting, non-destruction removal on battle, so yeah, not too bad. And also, if your opponent can only do stuff by battle because you're in a grind game, then they cannot get rid of this, because it's not just when this card attacks, it's every time this card battles, so very neat. We have obviously 1 Ghoti of the Deep Beyond, helps you finish games, helps you disrupt your opponent with its massive effect. Not that easy to get out in this specific variant because you lack certain pieces to make this super consistent, but a lot of the time it doesn't really matter too much because you will get into it eventually, and then it can be absolutely devastating for your opponent. And the original attack of this card becomes 500 times the number of banished monsters. Banished monsters, I think that also counts for your opponent's monsters, not just for yours. 1 Shogi Rook, because technically you can go into it. Abyss Keeper, very nice during your turn, and very nice also, well, not during your opponent's turn, but if you go second or later on in the game, because you can target 1 other fish monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls, banish those cards, so very, very neat. Decode Talker, budget hero. Power Code Talker, same reason, if you need to get rid of stuff. And Raster Liger just in here. Obviously there's rank 4, so you can play Access Code Talker and whatnot, Link Force that do a lot better. Other cards to mention, if you play the beautiful princess, then you can play 1 for 1 as well, because it does some stuff. Technically you can play Moray of Avarice because it does draw you things and can help you, and banishes stuff. Isn't too bad. If you have a tuner on board, then banishes and draw some more. Caught by the Grave, obviously very, very good cards. You can run stuff like Marince's Coral and Enemy, very, very neat. Evenly matched, quite nice against Telements at the moment. And one card I wanted to mention, but isn't really good in the deck because you don't have enough monsters on board usually to pull this off. But I really like the card, especially for a control deck, because you get not only to decide what card your opponent basically can't play, unless it's a deck that only uses graveyard effects, but also you get knowledge of exactly what your opponent can do this turn. And that is really, really helpful in any control deck, because you can plan your turn according to what you know your opponent can do, and that I feel like is worth it technically if you'd have a better way of stacking your board with monsters, which in this deck you sadly do not. Even if you have 2 on board, you usually want to use them for the synchros. Technically you can use the effect afterwards and tribute the synchro, but why would you do that? At that point it already doesn't really matter that much anymore. Let's move on to the rating section. Let's make this a quick one. Power level, strength of the deck, I would say it's a very, very, very low 3 out of 5. You could argue a very strong 2 out of 5. I think it has the potential to do really, really well, and you can upgrade it to do some stuff. Well, not really, really well, but solid 3 level. But right now, it isn't quite there yet. So I would say very low 3 out of 5. It lacks certain consistency, it lacks certain power plays, and yeah, that is where it gets you. Talking about consistency, a very strong 2 out of 5. It has consistency cards, but you will still end up with lots of like not playable hands, not necessarily unplayable, but semi-playable hands and very disruptible hands and stuff. So can't give it more than a 2 out of 5, because otherwise that would be very unfair towards other decks. And when it comes to budget value, the deck isn't like super expensive, but it's also not super cheap. You can upgrade it a bit, and in theory you can splash it into some decks, but not really that much at the moment. Maybe if there's more fish decks, and even without it being a fish deck, it still has its own tiny engine, I would say. Yeah, it's okay. I would say it's a 3 out of 5. It's not amazing. Could be a 2 out of 5, but I think a 3 would be a bit more fair, because it is fairly splashable at least. It's not absolutely locked to exactly Ghoti and nothing else. So there is that. Let's move on to the replay section. And here we are, replays. We are playing against Sky Strikers. We managed to go first. Have a decent hand, 3 disruptions, very, very nice. Usually you will get like 1 to 2 when it comes to this, but this hand does some stuff. Let's see what we can do here. The field spell has to go through, unless other than that we'll just sit on some back row, banish this card, so we have that for the next turn, and then show off the combo here. I could have just added it and normal summoned it, wouldn't have made much of a difference. Like this, I get it in defense position, which can be good, can be bad, depending on how you see it. They can technically force the activation of your monster now if they threaten to attack over this, but they can always do this with the tuner anyway. So I thought if you're playing against an OTK deck, maybe safer bet to get this in defense position, but when you search it, then you can instantly special summon it because a fish monster has been banished. So there's that. Set these 3 and pass your opponent's turn. Doesn't look amazing, but I mean, these cards will carry a tiny bit against the right decks. Not sure if Sky Striker is the right deck, but it is a deck that does some stuff. We fire the negate, well not negate, the play starter here. Maybe a bit prematurely, could have like kept it a bit longer, because they can dodge out of our removal. So I decided to go a bit of a strange route. Went into this one and now synchro them off to get the search for the next one, and went into this because I know they want to go into a monster that directly attacks, but I can negate the effect and then they can't attack over this one, and then I kind of make them having to deal with this one. Because I really wanted to get the search off, and there's only 2 level 8 monsters that would have done anything here for me. This is where the whole dolphin thing would have come in handy under the whale, but even then they could have just summoned this back with the effect of Ray, and then we would be at the exact same position. So maybe prematurely fired this, but this card threatens the opponent, and maybe they'll use some one of their spell cards to get rid of it. Obviously it might not have been the optimal play, but that is what I went for. They Skullmeister my search effect, so I don't actually get a search. Very, very upsetting here, but we will deal with it. They obviously drew into Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. Of course they did. They don't go into Kagari here to get the card back for whatever reason. We would have had a way to stop them here. Don't know why they've not done it. Maybe they haven't crafted it, I don't know. And then they end the turn. I decide to, yeah, let's maybe not let them search for the next turn. So did this and used the Lost Wind, because Lost Wind is kind of decent against Sky Strikers because they will always extra deck summon. I banish stuff on the graveyards. They get my Synchro monster and they will keep this. Annoyingly, they will keep this on the board, and I decided to go for the level 6, banish some more stuff, so we have some options during the opponent's turn. Well, not really, because we already banished this, and this one doesn't trigger. Remember, this one does not trigger here or during the opponent's turn, so this is just banished now, but I wanted this on board because now I can threaten some stuff with Silent Angler, and with this one I do make a tiny mistake here. The problem is summon limit doesn't really matter for us here, it actually just stops them from doing things, so it wasn't that smart for them to use it here, but if they don't know what Ghotis do, they thought I might go into some link place or something crazy that, yeah, I wasn't be able to, but yeah, I can't special summon anymore. Now what I should have done is attack with Angler over this one and then attacked with this card over the monster that they summoned back. With a bit of my mistake here, giving them more resources than I should have, because now I can't attack over it, and they couldn't have even special summoned another extra monster because I think they're also under summon limit because they summoned this one and now this one, so they should be done with that as well. So I would have been able to clear this a lot earlier, just keep that one in mind here, and yeah, it is what it is. Sometimes you do be making mistakes. Now I get my card back, and at this point I have access to a level 8 synchro or a level 6 synchro. Wherever I decide to go, we will see. They try to banish a Silent Angler for some reason. I would have gone for the tuner, doesn't really matter in the end. I use the effect here now, so I can still dodge that removal. Technically I could have just negated the effect, because I will negate the effect anyway, so I don't lose my monster attack wise, because they boost their attack stats. And I kind of don't want them to get rid of summon limit, because I feel like summon limit harms them as much as it harms me. So I feel it was absolutely fine that this was on board, and I didn't want them to get rid of it like this. I will negate the effect of that. And then they go into Shizuku again. Shizuku does some stuff. They have a multi-roll, and in the end phase they wanted to do things, but I know with multi-roll they can do crazy stuff, and I don't want them to get a Widow Anchor, so I decided to stop that one here as well in its tracks. And now we have some place that we can do. We have already used one of our summons, so we can only do one more. I add this card to the hand so I can do some stuff. I special summon from the hand and banish the other card that I can add back to my hand now, so I have place for the next turn in my hand as well, because like you can see we still have some fish in our graveyard, so we have these plays, and now I can search the trap, which will be very, very important to deal with the Sky Strikers here as well. We have some place for the opponent's turn, go into the battle phase, attack over some stuff, they get Ray back. Now I finally can deal with the whole thing. That's why I decided to negate here. I wouldn't have had to do this yet, because I would have already cleared the whole Ray thing, but now I felt like if I negate this, and then I can actually attack, and then I get rid of this, and then they can get Ray back, and they will have only 2 cards in hand, so one of the cards needs to be an engine to get into Ray, or they are a bit screwed here. So I thought this would have been a good negate, but also could come to bite me if they have a way, and they will always find a way, won't they? That's my experience with Sky Strikers at least. And yeah, getting one of my summons back. Now I have access to a level 8 synchro, which I still haven't used the one that banishes, so there's still some hope in the extra deck left, and I have the banish from the Fury, so should be somewhat fine. And of course they get into Pot of Avarice. Let's hope they don't draw anything too good from it, because they exactly have the 5 monsters as well. They go into Pathfinder, which could lead them to find another one of them. One of their Shizuku thingies, but well, linkages I think is the one that I would be having to look out for, so I thought let's banish that and not let them get into the field spell, because that can mean lots of stuff. For some reason they used the effect of Feather Duster now, not at the start. Maybe they weren't too bothered about it at that point, I don't know, but I would have still been able to get rid of Pathfinder using my Synchro combo, so not much of an issue here. And you can see the field spell stays because it's protected by its own effect, because we control a Synchro. They set 1 card, I decide to, oh, let's not find out what that is, let's get rid of this before the end of the turn. Getting rid of it, getting rid of my monster. I'm not sure why I couldn't special summon the monster back here, because I thought it should be. Maybe it's something about chain links or something, because if this card is banished, you can banish 1 fish monster from your graveyard, special summon this card, and you can only use each effect once per turn, so technically it should have worked. Maybe I made a mistake, maybe I am not looking at something here that I should be looking at, not sure. Should be able to get this back actually. Maybe you know a bit better what went wrong here. I get this monster back, now I can start some more combos, get more Fury for the next turn. We can normal summon the searched Leaffish now. Leaffish and the field spell get us even more stuff. Of course, summon limit is a bit annoying here, but we have a way of finishing this game fairly easily, attack stat wise, because we still have the trap card in the graveyard. and this can now boost our attack stats into infinity and beyond, and can finish the game here. I feel like this replay really showed off nearly everything this deck can do, but the big boss monster, the one that banishes everything on the field and then keeps on going. I have some other replays where it did use it, but usually your opponent then surrenders either, or they still beat you and it does nothing. So yeah, this replay showed how grindy this deck is. If the field spell is up, how many resources you can actually use. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, I hope you have a nice day.